We will deal with the following objectives in this lesson. Understanding starting strategies, understanding how starting aerials work, identifying emergency procedures on hands-free start systems, identifying the features of the steering column lock on hands-free start systems, understanding engine cut-off strategies, identifying the supply sequence procedures. Two actions must be combined to start the vehicle when the card is in the receiver aerial zone. If the vehicle is in neutral, press the brake pedal and the start-stop button. If a gear is engaged, depress the clutch pedal and press the start-stop button. On a vehicle with automatic transmission, set the lever to park or neutral and press the start-stop button. Hands-free starting is only possible when the doors are unlocked remotely, either by hands-free unlocking or unlocking using the Renault card. In this section, we have looked at the following points. A combination of two actions is required to start a vehicle with a manual gearbox. On a vehicle with automatic transmission, set the lever to park or neutral and press the start-stop button. Hands-free starting is only possible when the doors have been unlocked remotely. When the start-stop button is pressed, the UCH generates a radio frequency signal via the starting aerials. If the card recognizes its UCH, it responds to the challenge to the receiver aerial. If the UCH recognizes the card and the response is correct, the UCH moves on to the next Immobiliser stage. The aerials stop transmitting as soon as the card is identified. Depending on the vehicle model, there are two possible configurations for starting aerials. In the first case, the card reader is connected to the UCH. A starting aerial connected to the UCH transmits a signal to the Renault card. The receiver aerial is incorporated in the card reader. In the second case, three starting aerials, connected directly and independently to the UCH, transmit a signal to the Renault card. The receiver aerial is incorporated in the UCH. In this section, we have looked at the following points. When the Start-Stop button is pressed, the UCH identifies the card by means of a challenge sent via the starting aerials. Depending on the vehicle model, there are two possible configurations for starting aerials. If the hands-free start card is not recognized, the UCH consults the card reader. The card reader flashes. The card reader does not have a switch or a card lock. An emergency solution is a return to transponder mode. Just enter the card in the card reader. The card reader must be used if the doors and boot were unlocked manually or if the card battery is discharged. In this section, we have looked at the following points. If the hands-free start card is not recognized, the UCH consults the card reader. The card reader flashes. In some cases, the card reader must be used. The hands-free start system uses a specific steering column lock. A Hall effect sensor incorporated in the steering column lock informs the UCH when the column is unlocked. The UCH no longer supplies the steering column lock once the steering column has been unlocked. The locking and unlocking signal is transmitted via the multiplex network and a wire connection. The signal is repeated for security reasons. In this section, we have looked at the following points. The hands-free start system uses a specific steering column lock. For security reasons, the locking and unlocking signal is transmitted in two ways. When the vehicle is stopped, the engine is turned off by pressing the Start-Stop button. When the engine is stopped, the ignition is switched off and the plus accessories feed maintained. The steering column lock remains unlocked. The driver's door needs to be opened or the doors and boot locked to cut off the plus accessories feed and lock the steering column. On some hands-free start models, when the engine is stopped, the UCH authenticates the card in the same way as when starting. If the request to stop the engine is made when the card is outside the covered zone, a message appears on the instrument panel and a beep sounds. The engine does not stop. In this situation, the engine is turned off by pressing the Start-Stop button twice. In this section, we have looked at the following points. When the vehicle is stopped, the engine is turned off by pressing the Start-Stop button. If the card cannot be accessed by the system, a message appears on the instrument panel. In this situation, the engine is turned off by pressing the Start-Stop button twice. If the starting conditions are not fulfilled, the Plus Accessories feed can be supplied without authenticating the card by pressing the Start-Stop button. A challenge is issued when the Start-Stop button is pressed again. If the card is identified, the steering column is unlocked and the ignition switched on. By pressing it a third time, the steering column is locked and the supplies cut off. If the starting conditions are not fulfilled on some recent models, the Plus Accessories feed can be supplied with card authentication by pressing the Start-Stop button. The feeds are cut off by pressing it again. For after-sales requirements, when the card is within the coverage zone, the after-ignition feed is obtained by pressing the Start-Stop button for at least 5 seconds. In this section, we have looked at the following points. If the starting conditions are not fulfilled, a testing sequence for the various supplies can be launched by pressing the Start-Stop button one or several times. The testing sequence varies on some recent models and also provides a way of obtaining a Plus after ignition feed.